As a person who has been interested in metaphysics since early childhood, I have always found myself having deep connections with the spiritual realm, spirit guides, and those who have transitioned to a different dimension or reality. In fact, a lot of what I put on this channel is divinely inspired. I ask what to do next or teach next, and I'm perfectly guided. And I often receive comments saying such things as, "This was perfectly timed for me," or "This was so synchronistic with something I was just talking about." And then I giggle and tell the spiritual world, "You nailed it again." In the world of intentional manifesting, we learn to use our energy in specific ways. And through that path of understanding, it often leads us back to these types of spiritual connections. My personal belief is that when we are born, we still have a very close connection to the spiritual world. And as we move through the physical world and learn a bunch of rules and beliefs that go along with that, we often forget that we have the ability to connect with our spirit guides and our loved ones who have seemingly crossed over. If you're interested in learning how to get back to this type of connection, I'm going to give you a few tips here that have worked for me in my own life. And in following these things, you will begin to nurture and build upon your own ability to do this yourself by tuning back into the spiritual world. The first tip I recommend is to set the intention that you are open to all positive beings of light that would like to play with you or offer you a message. And then open your physical senses to this. Listen and look for signs. Sometimes you'll even smell things like a meal, perfume, or flowers that indicate a favorite something of someone who has passed and their presence. Or you'll have chills run throughout your body, or feel a light touch. The spiritual world works with your physical senses, so you know it's real. These things are generally aligned with the personality of the person coming through, and you'll notice this more readily if it's a loved one who has passed. Where my senses are concerned, I often see flashes of light or objects out of the corner of my eye, or hear my name being called or whispered in my ear. Recently, I had some orbs flying around my living room, and my cat Louie was watching and following them with me, so I knew they were real. They would come from behind me, fly over my head to the corner of the room, dance around for a minute, and then fly back behind me. I also often feel my cat who passed away many years ago jump up on the bed and lie next to me in the way he used to do. So if you set the intention and then pay attention, your physical senses will indicate to you when your loved ones or spiritual guides are around you. This leads me to my second suggestion, watching what your animals do and/or what young children do. You may already know this, but animals and babies have a unique connection to the spiritual world. They tend to see more easily what we've learned or been taught to tune out. If you see a small child laughing and cooing while paying attention to a specific area of a room that seems to have no one there, it's most likely that you just aren't seeing what they are seeing. The same applies to animals and their focus on seemingly nothing. When this happens around me, I like to ask who is there and for a more direct sign. I'm often surprised because the spirits like to communicate and wait for our curiosity of it. You can try this too the next time you encounter one of these situations to see what happens and begin building your spiritual connection. My next tip is to ask your spirit guides or loved ones to meet you in a spiritual council. This is one of my favorite ways to connect with spirit guides and family members, and I do this all of the time, often when I'm going to sleep. I have a special room in my imagination with a large table. If I have an issue in my life, I present it and ask for guidance. I've met 2 of my spirit guides in this way, one of which I knew from childhood, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. You can call on almost anyone in this way, and surprisingly, the advice you'll receive is always spot on, even if you fall asleep during this process and receive your answer when you wake up in the morning or sometime throughout the next day. When it comes to contacting our spirit guides, I also recommend paying attention to names and images that pop into your mind for no reason. When I was about 8 years old, I began drawing a picture of a man from an image in my mind. I didn't know this man in a physical sense, but I always knew he was with me. His name was Isaac, and I knew this because that was the name that came to me when I would draw his face. For several years, I kept drawing his face, and I can still see it vividly to this day. Isaac is always in my spiritual council meetings, offering wisdom and advice beyond what I'm physically aware of. And I recently had an interesting encounter with someone else who knew of Isaac, and specifically mentioned the name without my prompting of it, which led to even more confirmation that this spirit guide is real. If you have a name or an image in your mind of someone you don't know in the physical world that you just can't shake, it's likely that it's one of your spirit guides. and you can go into your mind to have a wonderful conversation with them and gain beautiful insight. I next recommend paying special attention to your dreams. After my father passed away unexpectedly, I started to feel a little sad that I had not connected with him for about a year. He had talked about coming back to visit me after he passed away. I speak to him every evening since he's passed, and one particular night he came to me in what I'll refer to as a lucid dream. It was the realest dream that I'd ever been in, and I knew with certainty that he was there. I was in the middle of a forest in a small clearing, and I felt his presence. I turned around, saw him, and he gave me the biggest hug. And I felt that hug just as if he were with me in physical form. We exchanged a few words, and then I woke up. Dreams are our connection to the spiritual realm. When we wake up in the morning, our brain begins to instantly look for clues about how to navigate the outer physical world. In other words, our physical needs begin to absorb our attention. This can shut us off somewhat from the spiritual if we are not intentionally honing in on it. So if you don't seem to be able to make this type of spiritual connection just yet in your waking world, I recommend setting the intention of meeting your loved ones and your spirit guides in your dreams. Simply ask them to come to you in a way that's most comfortable to you. This is a great way to begin developing your intuitive gifts. My next tip to create a deeper spiritual connection is to develop the skill of expanding yourself beyond your physical body. So I do this by going into a light meditative state with my eyes closed, and then I envision that my awareness is moving out several feet beyond my body, like a ball that expands around me in all directions. Next, I turn on my 360-degree awareness by setting my intention to do so. So I become sensitive to everything from all directions. Basically, I envision that I have turned on the eyes in the back of my head and in all other directions. Then I sense what I am experiencing, noticing what I hear, see, smell, and any textures that present themselves. And I'll often journal this experience after it's happened. In doing this, I get to sharpen my intuitive and psychic nature. It's an easy practice to implement, and it can take as long or as little time as you wish. Don't worry about trying to get this perfect when you first start doing it. Just notice what comes to you as you do. And my last tip is to ask for a sign that you're being guided or visited. I believe I've spoken before about my spiritual connection to white feathers. I asked for a specific sign from my spirit guides that would let me know that I was on the right track, and that's what was presented to me. I see them all of the time. So one day when I was vacuuming my home, I asked my dad to let me know he was around me. After vacuuming, I went back into my hallway to place my vacuum in the hall closet. This was an area that I had already vacuumed. When I walked into this area, there was a pile of about 30 white feathers on the floor, and I laughed pretty hard about it. I found it pretty amusing that my dad would mess up what I just did while also giving me a really big sign that he was there, because that's pretty much his personality. I also find coins showing up on my counter out of nowhere when I ask for these signs. So a simple request can yield some pretty amazing and oftentimes humorous results. Some people think this is just crazy woo-woo stuff, but I can assure you it isn't if you're open to it. We can choose to have an intuitive view and open ourselves up to all sorts of amazing things. By preparing our consciousness to be alert and fertile ground for a spiritual connection, we gain intuitive knowing. If you have a spirit guide or loved one that has passed, and you've developed a connection with them, and you have a suggestion to enhance this ability, I encourage you to place it in the comments of this video so others can begin to build upon their belief and their ability to do the same.